The Hindu traditions, gates and thresholds, no single gates, law written in deeds. Where the wood keeps a ledger and the Greek shore requires a ferryman's fare, the classical Hindu threshold carries a moral ledger written across a lifetime of deeds. And this builds directly on the earlier Vedic picture, where the Earth, Agni and Yama conduct the first pairs at passage. By turning household accountancy into a cosmic bookkeeping, karma, duty and family rights together trace the itinerary you cross at death. In this register, death is a crossing whose terms are already being accounted for long before the body is closed. What you have done, karma, what you have upheld, dharma, and what your household performs for you, shraddha and jesti, all become the entry code to whatever follows. Think of it as a customs gate and more an accounting office. Your book is open, your entry is visible, and the auditors, rather like kindly but exacting clerks called karmic consequence. The practical hinge, rights meet rules. In loose practice, the threshold work remains recognizably domestic and juridical. The funeral rites, anjesti, and the ongoing ancestor rites, shraddha, pinda, offerings, Pitṛloka observance, are the family's way of trying to secure a good onward outcome for the departed. Status among the Pitrs, temporary enjoyment in Svarga, or at least a propitious rebirth. These acts are not mere sentiment, they are social technology. They stabilize inheritance, maintain the household line, and keep the deceased's name active in communal memory. The performance of rites is therefore both liturgical and legal. It is what a household does to settle accounts before the cosmic accountants do their arithmetic. Karma as thresholds, deeds write the itinerary. Alongside rites runs the doctrinal economy of karma. In the classical text action, karma compounds in the results that determine future births and placements in the cosmological map, Svarga, Naraka, Pitṛloka, and so on. This is not a simplistic moral scoreboard. Classical authors nuance the doctrine with distinctions between intention, duty or dharma, and the remedial practices, parvakana, tapa, vratam, that alter one's course. The Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads situate action and knowledge as rival, and at times complementary routes to resolve the human predicament. Both thus shape what counts as thresholds. No single bolt, but multiple thresholds and historical layers. Do not expect a single neat gate in Hindu thoughts. The tradition is historically layered. The early ritual-centered world, Vedic and Brahmana, privileges household rites and Agni's carrying of offerings. The later classical world, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, introduces metaphysical concerns about Atman, the self, and moksha, and the Puranic and Smritic layers, Garuda Purana, Vishnu, and Bhagavata Puranas, elaborate a richly detailed topography of heavens, hells, and in-between stations with Yama's court and Chitragupta's account books. Each layer writes a different sort of threshold. Ritual competence, moral accounting, or finally a philosophical escape route. So treat the map as stratified rather than singular. So, if you prefer neat gates and one-time passwords, you will be disappointed. The Hindu afterlife is more like the tax office of eternity. Keep your records tidy, your duties well performed, and if you feel anxious, consult a guru, or at the very least a good commentator. Transit and Psychopomps, Yama's court, Chitragupta's role, and the yamadūtas. If the Vedic road is a household procession escorted by Agni and the two hounds, the later Hindu scene traces the road in administration. Yama keeps court, Chitragupta keeps the roads, and yamadūtas are the ancients who bring you for your audit. The picture is, yet again, bureaucratic theology. Not merely poetic, but organizational. A cosmic office in which past deeds, karma, are read, recorded, and set to account. Beginning with Yama's evolution from first traveler to judge. In the early hymns, Yama is the first man, a hospitable host who shows the way to the fathers, Pitṛ. Over time, he accretes juridical office. By the Puranic age, Yama is more explicitly the lord of the dead and the head of a court, a figure who presides over posthumous reckonings. The transformation does matter. The hospitable guide of the Rigveda remains recognizable, but the emphasis shifts toward adjudication and juridical consequence. So think hospital uncle toward magistrate with robes. Next, Chitragupta and the karmic ledger. Classical narratives describe Chitragupta, the celestial registrar who keeps the detailed account of a person's deeds. In many Puranic and folk accounts, Chitragupta's ledger is the source material Yama consults. Entries of action, omission, and intent are written down, similar to the role of Jehuti and Vizier in the Egyptian mythology. The book is opened at death. This bureaucratic image gives vivid shape to karma as not merely vague fate, but as something recorded, referenced, and applied. In devotional and popular imagination, Chitragupta is the divine clerk to whom one's moral receipts have been entrusted. Then, yamadūtas, the agents who fetch the soul. Yamadūtas, aka Yama's messengers, are the operative staff. They find the soul at death, bind it, and convey it to Yama's court for judgment. They recur in Puranic narratives and in ethical tales, and in some regional folk accounts, they are vividly legalistic: summons, reading, execution. The yamadūtas are the enforcement arm. One might imagine them like polite bailiffs of eternity, insistent but mythological. So, but how does this differ from the Vedic transit? Well, compare with the Vedic scene we just did. There, Agni carries oblations and Yama's image, is formative and hospitable. Transit there is intimately tied to household action. In classical Hinduism, the same actors remain, but are supplemented by an administrative overlay. Deeds are documented, Chitragupta. Executors exist, yamadūtas, and Yama's whole functions as tribunal. Ritual still matters. Shraddha and Pinda continue to feed ancestors. But karma's technicality and theoretical reading of action become much more pronounced. The domestic and the cosmic thus double book one another. Temporary punishments, revolts, and procedural nuance. The Puranic picture is not a simply punitive fatalism. Often the punishments in Naraka are corrective and temporary. A burn, a labor, a lesson, after which the soul is reborn according to karmic law. Conversely, Svarga, heavenly pleasure, is frequently temporary. Enjoyments there lead to later rebirth, not necessarily final liberation. The upshot is a procedural economy, hearings, sentences, corrective sanctions, and then further cycles, unless moksha intervenes by knowledge or grace. So, neither the threshold or soul, brief spent, is met by two pale messengers who hold a roll list. They read names aloud, bind the record with a loop of lights, and lead the shade up a column of stars toward a hall where a figure on the dais consults a large ledger. The priest at home pours his pinda. A child chants a name, the ledger's line close, and the order begins. It is intimate, administrative, and final. At least until the next birth. So, if you thought heaven was a pleasant picnic, the Puranic account will politely remind you that a good picnic ticket does negate the tax return, so keep your karmic receipts in order. God and Inhabitants, Svarga, Pitṛloka, and the administrative afterlife. You see, where the Vedic household sent the dead by Earth and Agni and imagined Yama's hospitable halls, the classical Hindu cosmos layers their domestic picture with administrative skies and many locals. Svarga for heavenly enjoyments, Pitṛloka for the ancestral household, Yama's court as the audit room, and a constellation of Loka names and later Puranic topographies that record, remunerate, or remit souls according to their deeds. The Vedic fathers, Pitr, remain the baseline. The classical map builds an office on the home, clerks, ledgers, and temporary postings included. Beginning with Saga, temporary delight, not final heaven. Svarga, also called Svargaloka or Indraloka, is the reward site in classical literature, a place of gardens, palaces, nectar and enjoyment, where those who accumulated punya, which is merit, enjoy the fruits of their good actions. Often presided over by Indra in many accounts. Crucially, Svarga is typically temporary. It is a merit-founded posting rather than the endpoint. After credits are spent, the soul usually returns to rebirth in the wheel of samsara, unless moksha has been attained. This image appears across Vedic echoes and Puranic descriptions. Next we have, again, Pitṛloka, the ancestral economy continued. Pitṛloka remains the social domestic counterpart to Svarga, the realm of the fathers who are sustained by Shraddha and Pinda from descendants. Unlike Svarga's delights, Pitṛloka is the continuation of household relation, ancestors as benefactors and claimants, and status there is directly shaped by the living's ritual economy, what the family does at Shraddha and Pitṛpaksha. Thus, the ancestral house remains, again, a civic technology. Keep the offerings coming, and the fathers, Pitr, remain propitious. Then Yama's court and Chitragupta, Bureaucracy in the beyond. The administrative image gathers force in Puranic and popular accounts. Yama sits in a hall, yamadūtas bring souls, and Chitragupta, the celestial registrar, reads the ledgers of deeds and supplies the documentary basis for judgment, similar to Jehuti in the Egyptian mythology. This clerical picture gives karma a procedural reading. Actions are recorded, receipts consulted, and sentences, temporary rewards in Svarga or corrective labor in Naraka, are pronounced. It's cosmic bureaucracy with rather grave consequences, although just temporary. Then inhabitants and stratification, lokas, devas, ancestors, and the nether zones. So, classical Hindu cosmology multiplies locals. Svarga above, Pitṛloka is ancestral domain, Madhya or Pitṛloka is the human plane, Patalas and Naraka below, Devas, Pitris, and varied denizens populate these spheres. Many Puranic lists specify the lokas and their rulers, Indra, Yama, and so on, producing a stratified afterlife geography in which status and function correspond to karmic and ritual records. The map is descriptive rather than uniform. Different texts emphasize different lists and features. But the overall bureaucratic intent is consistent, a stratified administrated cosmos. So, but how does this build on the Vedic baseline? Well, compare the Vedic Pitṛloka. The household and Agni remain central, but the Puranic horizon makes the process more documentary and theoretical. Where earlier hymns imagine Yama's hospitable hall, and the father's feasts, an emphasis on welcome. A later literature adds the registers, the yamadūtas, named lokas, and the procedural machinery that reads karma as a ledger. Ritual still matters. Shraddha still feeds Pitṛloka, and Punya still opens Svarga. But now each act is legible to clerks and accounted for in an expanded cosmic administration. Basically, if the Vedic household is a well-run inn, the Puranic cosmos is the national archive. Lovely gardens upstairs, exact records downstairs, and a not entirely comforting scribe at the desk. So, keep both your mantras and your merits tidy. Judgment, reward, and cultural function. Karma, accounted. Punishment, proportionate. Release, promised. If the Vedic household lays a table for the fathers and the Puranic cosmos installs clerks, the classical Hindu frame makes the universe itself a moral cash book. Karma is the running balance. Deeds, intentions, and duties write entries across lives. Yama and his office read those entries. Chitragupta keeps the register. The yamadūtas bring the account to the days, and the verdicts that follow shape temporary posting, Svarga, corrective posting, Naraka, ancestral placement, Pitṛloka, or, if one is very fortunate or very wise, final release, Moksha. The system treats action as technical. It has causes, effects, and procedures. Karma as a ledger, subtlety before simplicity. Karma is not a one-line moral scoreboard. Classical texts care about intention, duty, and the context of action. The Bhagavad Gita insists that action performed in accord with one's dharma and without selfish attachment produces different results than identical acts performed for gain. So, motive and station matter to the cosmic accounting. Equally, the tradition provides remedial routes, penance, prayashkita, gifts, vows, and ritual observance that can mitigate or even shift karmic consequences. The moral economy is therefore both rigorous and pragmatic. Yama's court in practice, Chitragupta, yamadūtas, and procedural justice. Classical and popular accounts picture Yama's court as tribunal. Chitragupta serves as the registrar, the divine clerk who has recorded deeds. And the yamadūtas are the executive staff who fetch and present the soul. The hearing is documentary. The register is consulted, testimonies of deeds read, and new sentences pronounced. In many tellings, the sentence is proportionate and corrective. A period of enjoyment in Svarga for merit, a period in Raga for transgression, or assignment to Pitṛloka where ancestral relations are the main currency. The Puranic manuals, Garuda Purana, and other sources elaborate these procedures and supply numerous illustrative punishments and their karmic analogues. Naraka, corrective rather than eternal torment. Well, mostly. Naraka in Puranic literature is often depicted as many hells, each fitted to particular violations. Thefts, frauds, sexual violence, betrayal of trust, and so on. With punishments described vividly in texts such as the Garuda Purana. Crucially, most classical accounts treat these punishments as temporary and remedial. They exhaust a karmic defeat, and then the soul returns to the wheel and is reborn according to the law of samsara. The pedagogical function is obvious. The threat of Naraka disciplines social behavior, but the metaphysical promise of final annihilation is generally absent. The true escape is moksha, not suffering per se. Svarga and Pitṛloka, reward as posting and not destination. Svarga, heavenly enjoyment, is real in Puranic imagination, gardens, feasts, and divine company, but it is a posting funded by punya, merit, and normally just temporary. Pitṛloka remains the ancestral house maintained by descendants' rights. Both sides function socially. Svarga reward acts that benefit society, gifts, sacrifice, courage. And Pitṛloka binds kin to ongoing ritual obligation. Neither, however, substitutes for moksha, the final, liberating release from the cycle. Speaking of moksha, the escape hatch, multiple paths. The classical horizon preserves rituals and bureaucratic adjudication while also offering routes to liberation. The doctrine of moksha appears in many forms: knowledge, jnana, devotion, bhakti, disciplined action, karma yoga, and the fruits of renunciation. The Bhagavad Gita frames these as complementary roads. One may seek purification through action performed without attachment, or one may pursue knowledge that dissolves the sense of bounded self. Moksha is an ontological release, beyond ledger, beyond punished posting, beyond rebirth even. That is the tradition's final promise for those who choose the path and attain it. And lastly, civic and ritual function. Why it matters socially. Functionally, this system is brilliant civic theology. It enforces ethical norms by mapping social harms onto metaphysical consequences. It stabilizes property and lineage through rites, achesti, shatta, and ancestral economy. It offers remedial pathways that work within social institutions, prayers, gifts, penances, and it supplies a soteriological horizon, moksha, that critiques pure ritual reproduction and invites inward transformation. The net social effect is to bind individual conduct to communal stability while still allowing for philosophical ascent and reform. So, think of karma as more of a very thorough bookkeeping system than a cosmic vindictiveness. The clerks are efficient, not cruel. So, keep your receipts tidy, give generously, and if all else fails, take up a practice that quiets the ledger.